There is another Japan, one that has been hiding in plain sight for over a century. An island so vast it covers more than a fifth of the entire country, where brown bears outnumber people in some regions, where volcanoes breathe fire beneath blankets of snow, and entire seas freeze solid under Arctic winds. This is Hokkaido, Japan's northernmost frontier, a place where Siberian storms deliver the lightest powder snow on Earth, where an indigenous people called the Ainu worshipped bears and orcas as living gods for thousands of years before the rest of Japan even knew this land existed. Hokkaido was the last of Japan's 4 main islands to be settled. While Kyoto was building golden temples and Tokyo was becoming the world's largest city, Hokkaido remained a wilderness, untouched, uncharted, untamed. It wasn't until 1869 that Japan formally claimed this island, and even today, more than 150 years later, Hokkaido still feels like a different country. The roads stretch endlessly through landscapes that look nothing like the Japan in travel brochures. Lavender fields roll over hills like purple oceans. Turquoise lakes glow in volcanic craters. Red-crowned cranes dance in frozen marshlands at the edge of the world. Researchers have documented over 30 active volcanoes across the island. Travelers report life-changing encounters with wildlife found nowhere else in Japan. And beneath it all, the Ainu people guard a spiritual connection to nature that scientists and anthropologists are only now beginning to understand. Over the next chapters, this journey will cross Hokkaido from its snow-buried ski resorts to its boiling volcanic valleys, from its vibrant cities to the most remote peninsula in all of Japan, a place the Ainu call the end of the earth. But first, a question. What happens when Siberian winds cross 1,000 kilometers of open ocean and slam into a volcanic mountain range? The answer falls from the sky in quantities that defy belief, and it has turned a quiet farming village into the powder snow capital of the world. Every winter, something miraculous happens over the Sea of Japan. Massive walls of freezing air roll off the plains of Siberia and sweep southeast across open water. As this Arctic air crosses the relatively warm sea, it absorbs enormous amounts of moisture. By the time these clouds slam into the mountains of Hokkaido, they release their cargo in an almost endless curtain of snow. But not just any snow. Scientists who study snowfall patterns have confirmed that Niseko receives some of the driest, lightest powder on the planet. The snow is so fine you cannot even pack it into a snowball. It floats like dust. Skiers and snowboarders call it japao, short for Japan powder, and the term was born right here. In a typical winter, Niseko receives around 15 meters of snowfall. That is nearly 50 feet of accumulated snow in a single season. Some years it snows for over 100 consecutive days. Fresh tracks disappear within minutes. The mountain resets itself overnight, every night, for months. Niseko sits at the foot of Mount Yotei, a perfectly symmetrical volcanic cone that locals call Ezo Fuji, the little brother of Mount Fuji. On clear days, its silhouette rises above the snow-covered forests like a painting from another century. But Niseko was not always famous. For decades, it was a quiet farming village surrounded by potato fields. Then Australian skiers discovered the powder in the early 2000s. Word spread fast. Within a few years, Niseko transformed into one of the most sought-after ski destinations in the world. Today the area is home to 4 interconnected resorts known as Niseko United. Powder hunters from every continent arrive each January, a month so legendary among snow chasers it has earned its own name, Japanuary. When the last run is done, there is another Hokkaido tradition waiting. Hot springs, outdoor onsen baths where skiers soak in steaming volcanic water while snowflakes melt on their shoulders. Fire beneath the ice, a first taste of the elemental forces that built this island. Niseko showed the world what Hokkaido's winters could offer, but the snow covers something far more unlikely, because just 100 kilometers east, a city of 2 million people stands where nothing but forest and bears existed barely 150 years ago. How do you build a metropolis in the middle of a frozen wilderness? Japan found a way, and it started with an American. In 1857, Sapporo did not exist. There was no city, no roads, no buildings, just dense forest, brown bears, and the Ainu people who had lived quietly along the rivers for centuries. Then Japan decided to claim the north. In 1869, the new Meiji government established the Hokkaido Development Commission and chose an American advisor named Horace Capron to help design its capital. Capron looked at the wilderness and imagined something that did not exist anywhere else in Japan. A city built on a grid, wide streets running north to south and east to west, like an American frontier town dropped into the forests of northern Asia. Within decades, Sapporo grew from nothing into the 5th largest city in Japan. Today, nearly 2 million people call it home. It is the beating heart of Hokkaido. The city's central artery is Odori Park, a ribbon of green stretching 13 blocks through the middle of the skyline. In summer, locals gather under the trees for festivals. In winter, the park transforms into the stage for one of the most spectacular events in all of Japan, the Sapporo Snow Festival. Every February, artists from around the world carve more than 200 sculptures from massive blocks of snow and ice. Some reach over 15 meters tall. They glow under colored lights while millions of visitors walk between them in the freezing night air. But Sapporo holds another claim to fame: beer. Japan's oldest beer brand was born here in 1876, when a German-trained brewer used Hokkaido's clean water and locally grown barley to create Sapporo Lager. The original brewery still stands as a museum, its iconic red brick and copper star a symbol of the island's pioneer spirit. And after dark, the city reveals yet another face: Sosukino, the largest entertainment district north of Tokyo. Thousands of restaurants, bars, and izakayas packed into glowing streets where salarymen and travelers sit shoulder to shoulder over steaming bowls of ramen. Sapporo proved that civilization could take root in the wild north, but just 30 minutes away, a quiet canal town tells a very different story. A story of fortune, decline, and beauty that refuses to fade. There is a melancholy to Otaru that visitors feel the moment they step off the train. This small port city sits just 30 minutes northwest of Sapporo, pressed between mountains and the sea. Its famous canal, lined with old stone warehouses and soft gaslight lanterns, looks like a scene frozen in time, and in many ways it is. In the late 1800s, Otaru was one of the wealthiest cities in Hokkaido. Herring fishing had turned it into a boomtown. Fortunes were built overnight. Grand merchant houses rose along the waterfront. Banks opened branches to handle the flow of money. Then the herring disappeared. By the mid-20th century, the fish stocks collapsed and the money dried up. Otaru's golden age ended as quickly as it had begun. The warehouses emptied. The mansions fell silent. But something unexpected happened. Instead of demolishing its past, Otaru preserved it. The canal was restored. The warehouses were converted into glass-blowing studios, music box shops and sushi restaurants that serve some of the freshest seafood in Hokkaido. Today, Otaru is famous for its nostalgic beauty, a town that turned decline into charm. Yet the true revelation lies beyond the city limits. Drive west along the coast for an hour, and the landscape transforms completely. The gentle harbors give way to dramatic cliffs plunging into water so impossibly blue that locals have given it a name: Shakotan blue. Cape Kamui juts out into the Sea of Japan like the prow of a stone ship. The cliffs drop hundreds of feet into churning surf. According to Ainu legend, this was a sacred place where spirits crossed between worlds. Even today, the narrow path to the cape's edge feels like walking to the very end of something. Researchers say the intense blue color comes from the extraordinary clarity of the water and the mineral composition of the seabed. But standing there, watching the light shift across that endless blue, science feels like a small explanation for something much larger. Otaru learned to preserve its past. The Shakotan cliffs guard their ancient blue. But further south, at the very tip of the island, one city did something no other place in Hokkaido ever attempted. It opened its arms to the rest of the world, and in doing so, it became a place where samurai fortresses stand in the shadow of Russian churches. Long before Hokkaido had highways or ski resorts, it had Hakodate. Perched on the southwestern tip of the island, this port city was one of the very first places in Japan to open its doors to foreign trade. In 1854, after more than 2 centuries of deliberate isolation, Japan signed a treaty with the United States. Hakodate was designated as one of only 2 ports where foreign ships could dock. Overnight, the city became a meeting point between civilizations. American, Russian, British and Chinese merchants flooded in. Churches rose beside Buddhist temples. Western-style brick warehouses appeared next to traditional Japanese homes. The result was something entirely unique. A city where East and West collided and somehow learned to coexist. That collision is still visible today. The Motomachi district climbs a steep hillside above the harbor, its streets lined with Orthodox churches, colonial mansions and former consulate buildings. It feels more like Vladivostok than Kyoto. But Hakodate's most famous landmark sits at the center of the city. Goryokaku, a massive star-shaped fortress built in 1864, designed using European military engineering, seen from the air or from the 107-meter observation tower beside it. The five-pointed star is unmistakable. It was the site of Japan's last Civil War battle in 1869, when samurai loyal to the old shogunate made their final stand against the imperial army. And then there is the night. Mount Hakodate rises 334 meters above the city. From its summit, the view after dark is considered one of the three greatest night views in all of Japan. The city spreads below in a narrow hourglass of light, squeezed between two black bodies of water. A glittering constellation trapped between sea and sky. Travelers who have witnessed it describe the experience as almost overwhelming, the kind of beauty that makes you hold your breath without realizing it. Hakodate is where Hokkaido's human story began, but now the journey turns inland, toward a landscape where humans become very small, and the earth paints with colors that no artist could invent. Every July, something extraordinary happens in the hills of central Hokkaido. The rolling farmland around the small town of Furano erupts in color. Lavender fields stretch across gentle slopes in every direction, painting the landscape in deep shades of violet and purple. The air fills with a sweet, calming fragrance that travelers say they can smell from kilometers away. The most famous of these fields belongs to Farm Tomita, a family operation that has been growing lavender since 1958. What began as a small commercial crop nearly disappeared when synthetic alternatives destroyed the market in the 1970s. The Tomita family almost abandoned their fields entirely, but then a photograph changed everything. A Japanese railway calendar featured an image of their lavender fields. The response was overwhelming. Visitors began arriving from across the country. Farm Tomita was saved, and Furano became one of the most beloved summer destinations in Japan. Today the farm spans over 20 hectares. Different varieties of lavender bloom in waves throughout July, creating bands of color that shift from pale lilac to deep royal purple. Beyond the lavender, other flowers fill the fields: orange marigolds, white baby's breath, red poppies, green strips of herbs. Together, they form a living rainbow draped over the hillsides. But Furano is more than flowers. This is the agricultural heartland of Hokkaido. The rich volcanic soil produces some of the finest produce in Japan. Melons so sweet, they are sold in wooden gift boxes. Corn that tastes like candy straight off the stalk. Wine from vineyards that benefit from the wide temperature swings between Hokkaido's seasons. There is a quietness to Furano that sets it apart from the rest of Japan. No crowds, no noise, just open sky, gentle hills, and the hum of bees moving through purple fields. Furano paints in purple, but just 20 minutes north, another landscape waits. One where farmers accidentally created one of the most photographed places in Japan, and where a turquoise pond, born from a volcanic accident, became so famous that Apple put it on every screen in the world. If Furano is a garden, then Biei is a canvas. This small farming community sits on a series of rolling hills just north of Furano, and its landscape has become one of the most photographed places in all of Japan. Not because of temples or monuments, because of geometry. The hills of Biei rise and fall in soft, sweeping curves. Farmers plant different crops in adjacent fields, and the result is an accidental masterpiece. Strips of golden wheat beside bright green potato leaves, beside chocolate brown soil, beside pale yellow barley. From a distance, the patchwork looks like brushstrokes on an enormous canvas. Two scenic routes curve through this landscape. Patchwork Road curves past the most famous hillside compositions. Panorama Road follows a ridge with views that seem to stretch to the edge of the world. Cyclists and drivers follow these routes slowly, stopping constantly because every turn reveals another impossible view. But Biei holds one more secret. One that put this quiet town on screens and wallpapers around the world. The Blue Pond. Tucked into a birch forest near the base of Mount Tokachi, the Blue Pond glows with an unreal turquoise color that looks digitally enhanced. But it is entirely natural. The pond formed accidentally when a dam was built to control volcanic mud flows from Mount Tokachi. Mineral-rich water from underground springs filled the basin, and the aluminum particles dissolved in the water scatter light in a way that produces that electric blue color. Dead birch trees rise from the water like pale skeletons, their white trunks reflected perfectly in the still surface. In winter, the pond freezes and is illuminated at night, turning the forest into something that looks like a scene from a dream. Apple even used an image of the Blue Pond as a default wallpaper, introducing millions of people to a place most had never heard of. Biei's beauty is gentle and quiet. something you photograph from a bicycle on a sunny afternoon. But beyond these painted hills, the landscape changes completely. The roads narrow, the towns disappear, and the largest national park in Japan rises into clouds that bring the first snow to fall anywhere in the country each year. The Ainu had a name for this place. They called it the playground of the gods. The Ainu called it Kamui Mintara, the playground of the gods. Daisetsuzan is Japan's largest national park. Over 2,200 square kilometers of volcanic peaks, alpine meadows, virgin forests, and deep gorges that have never been logged, paved, or developed. It sits in the center of Hokkaido like a massive green and white fortress, visible from almost everywhere on the island. This is where Japan sees its first snow each autumn and its first autumn colors each year. In late August, while the rest of the country still swelters in summer heat, the peaks of Daisetsuzan are already turning red and gold. Meteorologists and nature photographers watch this mountain range like a seasonal clock. The highest point is Mount Asahidake. At 2,291 meters, it is the tallest peak in Hokkaido. A ropeway carries visitors partway up the mountain, where they step out into a landscape that feels more like Iceland than Japan. Steam vents hiss from the volcanic earth. Snowfields persist well into summer. The silence is enormous. Below the peaks, Sonkyo Gorge cuts through the park like a wound in the earth. Sheer cliff walls rise on either side of the Ishikari River, their faces striped with columnar basalt formations that look like the pipes of a giant organ. Two waterfalls, Ryosei and Jinka, cascade down these walls side by side. Shooting Star Falls and Silver River Falls. Their names alone tell you what generations of visitors have felt standing beneath them. Hikers who venture deeper into Daisetsuzan report a kind of wilderness that barely exists anywhere in modern Japan. No vending machines, no convenience stores, just trail markers, mountain huts, and the occasional fox watching from a ridge. Daisetsuzan is Hokkaido stripped down to its essence, raw, ancient, and completely indifferent to human plans. But this island keeps a secret beneath its forests and snowfields, a furnace that never goes out. And at a place called Hell Valley, the earth tears itself open to prove it, where boiling rivers run through sulfur-stained rock, and travelers soak in water heated by the same volcano that could bury them. The steam rises before you see the valley. Thick, sulphurous clouds billow from cracks in the earth, swirling across a barren landscape of grey rock and yellow mineral deposits. The air smells of rotten eggs. The ground is hot to the touch. This is Jigokudani, Hell Valley, and it earns its name. Located just outside the town of Noboribetsu, Hell Valley is the exposed crater of a volcano that erupted tens of thousands of years ago. Today it still simmers. Dozens of vents blast superheated steam and boiling water from deep underground. Hot rivers flow through the valley floor, their banks stained orange and white by mineral deposits. Noburibetsu has built its identity around this geological fury. The town is Hokkaido's most famous hot spring resort, and every drop of its onsen water is heated by the volcano beneath it. Travelers soak in mineral-rich baths while snow falls gently around them. Fire below, ice above. The contradiction is pure Hokkaido. But the volcanic story deepens at Lake Toya, just 40 minutes west. Lake Toya is a caldera lake, formed when a massive volcanic eruption caused the Earth to collapse inward. The lake fills a basin roughly 11 kilometers across and is one of the few lakes in Hokkaido that never freezes, even in the deepest winter. Warm volcanic currents circulating beneath the surface keep the water just above freezing year-round. At the lake's southern edge stands Mount Ushu, one of the most active volcanoes in Japan. It has erupted 4 times in the last century alone, most recently in the year 2000. That eruption created new craters, destroyed homes, and permanently altered the landscape. Today, visitors can walk along elevated boardwalks through the eruption zone, where buckled roads and half-buried buildings remain exactly as the volcano left them. Geologists study Mount Ushu as a living lab. The mountain is still growing, still shifting. Hokkaido's volcanoes are a reminder that this island is never truly still. The same forces that shaped Hell Valley and shattered the earth around Mount Ushu also carved something far more beautiful in the east. 3 lakes so clear, so sacred, that the Ainu believed they were doorways to the world of the gods, and in one of them a life form has been growing in silence for thousands of years. There are places on Earth where water does not just fill a landscape, it defines it. Eastern Hokkaido holds 3 lakes that have captivated scientists, spiritual leaders, and travelers for centuries. Each one is different. Each one feels like it belongs to a different world. Lake Mashu sits inside a steep volcanic crater, with no rivers flowing in or out. It is one of the clearest lakes on the planet, with visibility reaching depths of over 40 meters in some measurements. The Ainu called it Kamuto, Lake of the Gods. On rare clear mornings, the water reveals a blue so deep and so pure that it has its own name, Mashu Blue, but the lake is often hidden beneath a thick blanket of fog, earning it a reputation as one of the most mysterious places in Hokkaido. Nearby, Lake Kushiro fills the largest caldera in Japan, nearly 80 kilometers around its shore. It is enormous by any standard. In winter, volcanic heat beneath the lake bed creates patches of warm water, where whooper swans gather by the hundreds. The sight of white swans floating on steaming water surrounded by snow-covered mountains is one of the most extraordinary winter scenes in the country. And then there is Lake Akan. Lake Akan is home to marimo, spherical colonies of algae that grow into soft, velvety green balls over centuries. They are found in only a handful of lakes worldwide, and the colonies in Lake Akan are among the largest, some reaching over 20 centimeters across. The Ainu considered them sacred. On the shores of Lake Akan sits Ainu Kotan, a small settlement where more than 100 Ainu people still live and share their culture. Woodcarvers sculpt owls and bears from local timber. Traditional dances are performed in a lakeside theater, and elders teach visitors about Kamui, the Ainu belief that spirits live within all things in nature. The bear is the god of the mountains, the orca is the god of the sea, the owl is the guardian of the village. The Ainu understood something that took the rest of the world centuries to articulate, that humans are not separate from nature, they are part of it. From these sacred shores, the journey turns north, toward a coastline where something impossible happens every January. An entire ocean freezes, and on that ice, some of the largest eagles on Earth gather in numbers that leave even seasoned wildlife photographers speechless. Every January, something appears on the horizon off the coast of northeastern Hokkaido. At first it looks like a white line, then it grows. Day by day, the line thickens and spreads until the entire sea is covered in a vast sheet of drift ice. This is the southernmost sea ice in the entire northern hemisphere, and it arrives at the shores of Abashiri like a slow, silent invasion. The ice originates nearly 1,000 kilometers away, at the mouth of the Amur River on the Russian coast. Fresh water from the river mixes with seawater, lowering its salinity and freezing point. As winter deepens, this ice forms, breaks apart, and drifts south on the Okhotsk Current until it reaches Hokkaido. From the shore, the frozen sea stretches to the horizon. It groans and cracks as the pieces shift against each other. Icebreaker ships carry visitors into this frozen world, smashing through the white surface while passengers stand on deck in the bitter wind, watching the ocean shatter and reform behind them. But the ice brings more than spectacle. It brings life. Stella's sea eagles, among the largest raptors on Earth with wingspans reaching 2.5 meters, gather on the ice floes in extraordinary numbers. They perch on frozen ridges, their dark bodies and massive orange beaks sharp against the white. Photographers from around the world travel to Abashiri specifically to capture these birds, and many describe the experience as one of the most powerful wildlife encounters they have ever had. Abashiri carries a darker history as well. The city was once home to one of Japan's most notorious prisons, built in 1890 to house convicts who were forced to build roads through the Hokkaido wilderness. Many died in the brutal conditions. The prison is now a museum, and walking through its wooden cell blocks and punishment rooms offers a sobering reminder of the human cost of colonizing the North. Abashiri guards a frozen sea and a dark history, but from here the drift ice trails eastward along the coast, toward a peninsula so wild that most of it has no roads, no buildings and no human footprint at all. The Ainu gave it a name that still echoes across centuries. They called it the place where the earth ends, and when you arrive there you understand that they were not exaggerating. In the Ainu language, Shiretoko means the place where the earth ends. The Shiretoko Peninsula juts from the northeastern corner of Hokkaido, like a jagged finger pointing into the Sea of Okhotsk. It is 70 kilometers long and 25 kilometers across at its widest point. A spine of volcanic mountains, some still active, runs down its center. Most of the peninsula has no roads, no buildings, no human presence at all. In 2005, UNESCO designated Shiretoko as a World Natural Heritage Site, not just for its land, but for the extraordinary connection between its marine and terrestrial ecosystems. The drift ice that reaches Shiretoko each winter carries nutrients that feed plankton blooms when it melts. Those blooms feed fish, the fish feed birds, seals and whales, and the salmon that swim upriver each autumn feed the brown bears that roam the peninsula in one of the densest populations anywhere on Earth. Shiretoko is home to an estimated 500 brown bears. Boat cruises along the western coast regularly spot them on rocky beaches, fishing in river mouths or climbing cliffsides with their cubs. In the waters offshore, orcas patrol between May and June. Sperm whales pass through deeper waters. Blakiston's fish owl, one of the rarest and largest owls in the world, hunts in the old-growth forests along Shiretoko's rivers. Five pristine lakes, known simply as the Shiretoko Five Lakes, sit in a forest clearing surrounded by peaks. On still mornings, the lakes mirror the mountains so perfectly that it becomes impossible to tell where water ends and sky begins. Hikers must attend a safety lecture before walking the trails. Bear encounters are not a possibility, they are an expectation. In winter, visitors can walk on the drift ice itself. Wearing dry suits, they follow guides out onto the frozen sea, stepping across floating sheets of ice while the volcanic peaks of Shiretoko rise behind them. It is one of the most surreal experiences available anywhere in the natural world. Standing at the edge of Shiretoko, looking out over a frozen ocean under a sky filled with eagles, it becomes very easy to understand why. This is the emotional summit of Hokkaido. The place where nature still rules completely, where the earth feels most alive and most ancient. But an island this wild, this fertile, this surrounded by cold, rich ocean, does not just produce extraordinary landscapes, it produces extraordinary food, and this kitchen holds dishes that the rest of Japan cannot replicate. Dishes born from the same volcanic soil, the same frozen seas, and the same pioneer spirit that built everything we have seen so far. There is a reason why the rest of Japan looks to Hokkaido when it wants to eat well. The island produces more food than any other region in the country. Its volcanic soil grows vegetables with an intensity of flavor that farmers in warmer climates struggle to match. Its surrounding seas deliver some of the freshest seafood in the Pacific, and its dairy industry, born from the wide-open grasslands of the interior, creates milk, butter, and cheese that have become nationally famous. But Hokkaido's food culture is not just about ingredients. It is about dishes that exist nowhere else. Sapporo gave Japan miso ramen, a rich, heavy bowl built on fermented soybean broth, topped with butter, sweet corn, bean sprouts, and thick, chewy noodles designed to survive the heat of the soup. The story goes that butter was originally added to keep the broth warm longer in Sapporo's freezing winters. Ramen Yokocho, a narrow alley of competing ramen shops in the city center, has been serving this dish since the 1950s. But ramen is only one chapter in Hokkaido's food story. Hakodate is known for shio ramen, a delicate salt-based broth made with local seafood. Asahikawa serves shoyu ramen with a soy sauce base. 3 cities, 3 styles, a ramen rivalry that locals take very seriously. Then there is Genghis Khan, Hokkaido's beloved grilled lamb dish, named after the Mongolian emperor. Thinly sliced lamb or mutton is cooked on a dome-shaped iron grill, while vegetables simmer in the juices that drip down the sides. The dish traces its roots to a government program in the early 1900s that established sheep farms across the island. Most were abandoned, but the 2 in Hokkaido survived, and lamb became a local specialty found almost nowhere else in Japan. Soup curry emerged from a single Sapporo cafe in the 1970s, a thinner, spicier cousin of traditional Japanese curry, loaded with whole vegetables and served alongside rice. It has since become one of the city's signature dishes. And the seafood. Hokkaido's morning markets overflow with king crab, snow crab, sea urchin, scallops, salmon roe, and squid so fresh it is still translucent. The kaisendon, a bowl of rice buried under layers of raw seafood, is not a tourist invention, it is breakfast. Hokkaido feeds Japan, and in doing so it reveals something about itself. That even on an island defined by volcanoes and wilderness, the most universal human experiences still center around a table. This journey has crossed frozen oceans and boiling valleys. It has walked through lavender fields and stood at the edge of the earth. But the final destination is none of these things. It is a silent, snow-covered marshland. And it is here, in the quietest place in all of Hokkaido, that one of the rarest birds on Earth has been performing a dance for longer than any civilization can remember. Winter. The marshland is silent beneath a deep blanket of snow. The Kushiro wetlands stretch across eastern Hokkaido in a vast expanse of frozen grassland, rivers and shallow lakes. At nearly 270 square kilometers, this is the largest wetland in all of Japan. In summer, it teems with hundreds of plant species and over 1,000 different animals. But in winter, most life retreats. The landscape empties. The silence becomes enormous. and then through the cold morning mist, they appear. Red-crowned cranes, standing over 150 centimeters tall, with wingspans reaching nearly 2.5 meters, they are among the most elegant birds on Earth. Their bodies are brilliant white, their wings are edged in black, and on the crown of each head sits a patch of bare crimson skin, the red cap that gives them their name. These cranes were once thought to be extinct in Japan. By the early 1900s, hunting and habitat loss had reduced their numbers to fewer than 40. The species was on the edge of disappearing forever, but local farmers in the Kushiro region began leaving grain in the fields during winter. Slowly, carefully, the cranes returned. Today, more than 1,800 live in Hokkaido, the largest population in Japan, and every winter, they dance. The cranes bow to each other, leap into the air with outstretched wings, and call across the frozen marsh in voices that can be heard for kilometers. Scientists have documented that these dances strengthen pair bonds and help younger cranes learn courtship behavior. But watching it happen in person, with the snow falling and the mist rising and the cranes moving in perfect synchrony, science again feels like a small explanation for something much larger. In Japanese culture, the crane symbolizes longevity, fidelity, and good fortune. Legends say a crane lives for 1,000 years. In Hokkaido, where these birds nearly vanished and then came back, that symbolism carries a weight that goes beyond mythology. This is where the journey ends, not at a mountain summit or a city skyline, but in a silent white marsh where ancient birds still dance in the snow. Hokkaido is Japan's last great wilderness, an island of fire and ice, of sacred lakes and frozen seas, a place where bears walk volcanic coastlines and eagles ride Arctic winds, where a people called the Ainu understood something that the modern world is only now beginning to remember. That the earth is alive, and if you are willing to travel far enough north, you can still hear it breathing.